do a quick sound check. Just asking people if they can hear you. Go for it.
Hi, this is Jon Bonné. Just doing a sound check. Make sure you can hear us.
Hi, I'm Stephy Terrizzi.
Subject. Give us a quick comment if they hear us.
Give me a quick comment if you can hear us. Loud and clear.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Stephy Terrizzi,
I'm Brian.
and we're excited to be tasting the Broadside Wines here at Charles Communications office in downtown San Francisco. Broadside was started back in 2006. We made 1,000 cases of the Margarita Cabernet, and everything else has kind of come into place after that.
So I began my wine career at Rosenblum in the East Bay of Bay Area, and attended Fresno State, and that's actually where I met Steffi. I worked at a wine shop, and a lot of my friends from wine school at Fresno State ended up moving on to great wineries that produce a lot of higher priced wines. And working at a wine shop, most of the wine I sold was very affordably priced boutique style wines, and unfortunately a lot of them were from Spain and Argentina and things like that. And I always had this dream of doing wines with a boutique mentality from California grapes. So when we started Broadside, that was really the focus, and just to put everything into the bottle. And that was in 2006 was our first release, as Steffi mentioned, with the Margarita Cabernet. Next we started with Chardonnay in 2008, and we're excited to show you these wines tonight.
A little about my background. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in the Chicago area and moved out to California in 1997 to get away from snow. It's very cold there. I worked in some different restaurants up in Santa Rosa, became a wine buyer. I thought I needed to know a little bit more about wine tasting and understanding wine a little bit more, so I started taking some classes at the Santa Rosa Junior College, and quickly found myself out in the vineyards, which has become my passion. So I am the grape grower, and Brian is the winemaker for Broadside.
So maybe let's get started and taste these wines. And we have 4 of our wines here. We have the Wild Ferment, the 2014. We have the 2013 Paso Robles Cabernet. We have the Margarita Vineyard Merlot. And then we have the wine that started it all for us, the Broadside Margarita Cabernet from 2013. So that's right here. All right, first wine. And I guess you're tasting with us, right?
Yeah.
So
The Wild Ferment Chardonnay is really fun. The fruit comes from Edna Valley, which is a colder spot in the Central Coast. I always kind of say it's our vineyard that has sweater weather. It's really sandy soils, and this is the Old Clone 5. The acidity is pretty high because it's so cool there. So instead of fighting with the acidity, we really kind of embrace that acidic nature and kind of try to create a wine that does great with the acidity.
So with Broadside, our focus is really to create wines of balance, and I think you'll see that across all of our wines. With Chardonnay, there's a little bit of neutral oak. It's mostly stainless steel. Every wine we really want to show the varietal the vintage, and balance. So all these wines hopefully are wines that are very food friendly, very clean, very pure. We talk about purity of site, purity of vintage, purity of varietal, and that's really what Broadside's all about. So, hopefully with this wine, you taste, kind of strip down what Chardonnay is supposed to taste like, but also balance. It's not designed to be a pure stainless steel wine. Those wines can be a little bit shrill, but balance is kind of the key word here.
This is quite a bit different from our 2013.
Yeah, I think little more oak influence. I mean, it was still neutral barrels, but I think it's showing pretty well. I mean, hopefully.
We have a question from Nancy, Pull That Cork from California, asking about any issues using native yeast fermentation with the Chardonnay.
Okay, so we have a question from Nancy of Pull That Cork. She asked about native fermentation with Chardonnay. It's funny with native fermentation. They're really. I have yet to have a problem. It's one of those things where, at Fresno State, you learn how to use selected yeasts and all the additions and all the products that go into making wine. But after Fresno State, I really explored taking a more natural path. You have to know how to fix things, but surprisingly, yeast do their thing, and a lot of winemakers will let things kind of start off native and then add selected yeast, but by that point the population's so massive that the wine will actually go through native anyway. So I mean, you're adding yeast to something that doesn't really need it. So I don't think we've had any issues.
Sometimes the trick in the cellar is to just taste, and a couple times a day you just keep tasting and tasting and tasting. And you get so used to tasting the same flavors that once you taste something kind of weird in there, you can isolate the problem and decide if you want to do something about it then or not. But we so far haven't had any issues with native fermentations.
I mean, a lot of times just moving wines around, giving them some oxygen solves problems. I mean, it's kind of amazing that the things you can do very simply to fix problems versus throwing a bunch of products at it, and it saves money too. So that's helpful. So yeah, any other thoughts on the wine? I mean, for us, it's I think this is just kind of getting out into the market. It hasn't really been out there for too long, but we're certainly happy with it, and we made about somewhere around 2,000 cases, so it's definitely fairly small production wine.
Divine Wine Time from California has a question about the label. How did you guys decide on the name Broadside?
So Broadside, I'm actually wearing my City Lights bookstore T-shirt here, but Broadside is actually, people say, "Oh, that wine hit me broadside," and all this stuff like that. But it really goes back to the documents that the early beat poets produced their works on, and we always, Steffi and I love that literary aspect, and coming up with the name, the label's really bold. It kind of looks like a broadside, and and it has a nice ring as well. But it's funny because consumers never seem to ask that question, but folks like yourself always do. So
Yeah, it's also got a name that's memorable, somewhat masculine sounding, and it rolls off the tongue pretty easy.
Wine and Good Food from LA is asking, what made you decide to gravitate towards making natural wines?
So this is Wine and Good Food from LA. What is what makes us decide to make masculine?
Natural.
Oh, natural. Sorry. So natural. I mean, I think our attitude is, the more natural you keep things, the easier. The more you show the terroir, the expression of the grape. I've worked in wineries prior to this where there was quite a bit of manipulation, and what I found is all the wines kind of tasted the same. I really like wines that express individuality and kind of show a window to the variety, the place it's grown, and it's a lot simpler. The most important thing, which is Stephy's role, being a viticulturalist, if you bring in the grapes in balance, lower sugars, good acidity, you really don't have problems in the cellar. It's a really simple concept. It doesn't necessarily happen all the time in Paso Robles. There's a tendency to produce riper style wines, and that's where you have issues, and you need to manipulate. So natural acidity from the grapes is makes it really easy to do what we do.
I think the most important thing we do in the vineyard is pick the grapes at the right time. It's just like when you make a salad at home. If you use fresh lettuce, fresh ingredients from the garden, it's always going to taste great.
So let's. There's not any more questions about.
What would you pair with the Chardonnay?
So Chardonnay, I'll use it. Stephy's a sommelier, so we'll let her.
I always say, Chardonnay can be really boring, so you have to do something as a winemaker in the cellar to kind of make it interesting. I feel this one has a lot of minerality to it. Much more so than our 2013, which I find very pleasant. You could almost pair this with something creamy if you would want to bring out kind of, a pasta with a light cream sauce to kind of bring out the fruitiness of this wine. Or if you want to do it with fish or chicken, you could do that as well. Something lemony might also kind of bring out the fatness of this wine.
Great. You're getting a lot of great comments on the Chardonnay. A lot of people are tasting it at room temperature, and they're saying it's perfect at room temperature as well with no flab. So.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right. So now, when we started Broadside, it was really about Cabernet, and it was really one of those things. I also produce wines that are my wife and I under a label called Giornata. So it's pretty obscure Italian varietals, and it's almost like it was a backup plan because we only sell 100 cases of Nebbiolo a year, and in my role in a wine shop and Stephy's role in restaurants, Cabernet is king. The issue we had was, a lot of the Cabernets out there really lacked the balance and kind of the boutique nature at good price points. So, when we started Broadside, we really wanted to make a wine that was very balanced, has been, very true to vintage and all that other stuff we talked about. And so we started with the Margarita, which we'll taste at the end. A new addition for us is a wine just from Paso Robles, and this actually comes from a few different vineyards that we've worked with, some for 10 years, some for a little bit less than that. But what's cool about it is we're able to offer even better value. So this retails anywhere from like $15 to $18. Still made in the same way we made our original Margarita Vineyard Cab, and hopefully offers just tremendous value and classic Cabernet character.
So if you've ever been to Paso Robles, it's kind of interesting. It's like kind of the city's in the middle, and it's almost surrounded all around by rolling hills. There is a flat area in there, but kind of up on the northern side, we source from one of the vineyards that's owned by the Harvard Law Endowment, and they've kind of connected kind of a big strip of land, but it's a hilly area. The grapes are looked after by James Ontiveros, who used to look after the Vineyard Vineyard down in Santa Maria, and Matt Turrentine. So it's two great partners to work with. We're really excited. They're planting more grapes, and as we're growing this wine, they are growing more grapes. We also source a little bit from the Margarita Vineyard, and then we have a third source from kind of the middle part of Paso Robles.
Here's a question. It came from Dizelle at my vine spot that the Chardonnay has a screw cap and the reds are closed with cork. We didn't cover this, right?
No, we didn't.
Okay. So they were wondering if the closure is suggestive of an early drinking window.
For the Chardonnay, correct? Okay, so this is a question from my vine spot, and it was a question about Chardonnay, if it's more suitable for an early drinking window. I mean, I would say yes because of the price point, but you know, the interesting thing about screw cap closures is the wines can actually age longer. I mean, sometimes they don't even really age much. I mean, I've had reds under screw cap that taste really fresh after several years. I think the reason we use the corks on the reds as opposed to screw cap is because we make them to be very serious wines, but at an affordable price. I think, you know, for the restaurant world, which most of our wines, we sell a great deal of them through restaurants, and by the glass in restaurants. You know, screw cap is certainly easier, but you know, I don't think you know, Bordeaux Cabernet Merlot buyers would really appreciate screw cap for the quality we're trying to put in the bottle. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. So hopefully that answers the question.
We do have a second Chardonnay from White Hawk Vineyard that we do in cork closure. A little smaller production.
Could you talk about that difference in the winemaking for that versus the wild ferment?
Sure. So our White Hawk Vineyard Chardonnay, it sees actually a little bit of new wood. We use Dami barrels, which you know are really outstanding. You know, Burgundy barrels, white Burgundy barrels. You know, and it's a more kind of serious. You know, a little more in the California style, but still with great acidity. The vineyards, single vineyard from Santa Barbara County. Stephy, it's a vineyard Stephanie's worked with for a long time with some of her consulting partners, and we kind of the grapes became available, and they didn't have a home, and we were there at the right place at the right time, and just said, yeah, we'll take them, and it's been a really interesting new wine for us, but. You know, again, it's you know only a few hundred cases, so it's pretty tiny.
It's fun to work with those historic clones in California, those old clones.
Yeah, so it's Mount Eden and 76 are the two clones. So this Paso Cab, you know, I think hopefully what's interesting about it is it has that classic Cabernet quality. It has a little bit of the green elements you get with Cabernet, not bell pepper green, but more of the herbal qualities, but it also has, you know, kind of the currant and the red fruits, but it's pretty soft on the palate as we progress through the wines. You know, like the Margarita Cab has a good amount of structure, so you know, I think this makes more sense as kind of a daily drinker for people that are just looking for an affordable, easy-to-drink Cabernet. That's really what we're trying to accomplish here, just suit a really broad palate base with the wine.
Just seeing nice comments about the wines, about the cab.
Thank you. Nice comments.
Some people think it's a tiny bit tight, but it's quite beautiful. One person's using an aerator to drink it.
Yeah, so someone made a comment that the wine might be a little bit tight, and to be honest, you know, comments like that I appreciate because, you know, when you're making serious wines and you're paying attention to volatile acidity and you're making, we're trying to make wines that really over deliver on price, and we get asked all the time, can these wines age? We had a big retailer in town and we opened a 2008 Margarita Cabernet, and I mean, he said, wow, this is outstanding, it's great. And we opened it because we're not making these wines to just be a big ripe fruit bomb that you can. I mean, we want people when they buy a bottle of Broadside to say, wow, I mean this tastes like a serious bottle of wine. Maybe decanting could make sense, and to me, hopefully that's an indication of the quality we're trying to deliver. So if there's not anything else on the Paso Robles
There
Cabernet.
is actually.
Okay.
Sorry, sometimes it takes a little time.
Sure.
Question from Dizelle, My Vine Spot. For those not accustomed to Paso Cab, would you call this textbook?
So there's a question from My Vine Spot, and the question was, is this a textbook Paso Cab? I mean, I would say very much it's not, and that's not in a bad way. It's just, the comments we get a lot is, I'm surprised because this wine is much more restrained and elegant and balanced. And, a lot of it really comes from, I believe consumers' palates are moving in that direction. I mean, there certainly are people, that love their Meiomi and they love, Rombauer Chardonnay and wines with richness and opulence, and I do too on occasion. But I think this, with Broadside, we're looking for a little more finesse, a little more balance, and that's not the predominant style in Paso. And Steffi, with her approach to farming, is really looking for vineyard balance and picking at the right time. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Well, I'll chime in that I agree with you completely. I mean, as we travel around and do sales for these wines, especially out of the state, I remember my first market visit to Chicago. I got hit with a lot of resistance there's expectations of what a Paso Robles wine tastes like. And a lot of people tried them and said, this is not the typical Paso Cabernet. This is exciting. This is something different. This is a totally different taste profile than what I've tasted in the past. And for me, that was exciting and kind of made us realize that we're doing something a little bit different and a little bit special.
Question on just on the labeling. One person pointed out the San Lucas Paso. We explained the Santa Rosa label, but Creston.
Yeah. So Creston, there's a question. Sorry, there's a question about labeling and bottling. Creston's it's a little town just adjacent to Paso Robles. So, we have a small winery facility, and our bottling happens in bigger wineries, and this is a facility that's able to handle our bottling. Creston's, it's actually really close to the Margarita Vineyard, probably 10 minutes down the road. So that's kind of the nature of the business. When you're a small player, you need to bottle in bigger facilities.
And wherever that truck can get and you can get on their schedule, you take it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting comments of peppercorn, eucalyptus in the wine. Anything you want to say about the aromatics?
Yeah, so comments, there's comments of peppercorn, eucalyptus. I'm sure you're seeing that. Those are all real positives to me, because those to me are reflective of picking when the grapes are in balance. When you pick a little on the earlier side, and I learned this working at Rosenblum, you capture some of those kind of secondary characters that make wines really interesting. When you pick on the later side, you really get the concentrated fruit flavors and the ripe blackberries, and while that's exciting on some level, I really appreciate the the herbal qualities is what I like to say. And Steffi usually writes our wine notes, but I'm many times know that if we pick at the right time, we'll come up with all these really interesting aromas and flavors just beyond the general fruit components. And to me, that's what makes a really complex, exciting wine.
Question on who did the branding and the design. Lots of nice comments about that.
So the question was kind of on the label design and the branding. We came up with the name, and the labels are designed by a gentleman in Oregon named Michael Kurtz. He sat down and talked with us and just kind of came up with this design on his own. And just hearing what we had to say, kind of thought this really fit the bill for to be the look of what Broadside was all about. We were pretty happy with it.
Yeah, so I think he understood we were really looking for balance, a modern approach, and wanted something clean. We want the wines to be very clean, very thoughtful, and the design is amazing. I think it's I worked 3 years in a wine shop and looked at labels all day long, and it's rare that there's a label that really pops out like this one. So anywhere we go and we tend to just see our wines, it's really exciting. He did an amazing job.
So Wine and Good Food from LA is asking to elaborate a little more on why Paso. What made you decide to make wine there?
I'll take that one. The question was, what made us decide to go to Paso Robles? So we met at school at Fresno State and went over to Paso Robles actually searching for some Nebbiolo, some newer clones that came through a nursery up in Santa Rosa. And when I called there, you called, there were only 4 vineyards that had these new clones of Nebbiolo. So we decided to try to visit whatever was close to us. So one of these vineyards was in Paso Robles, and we went over and looked at the soil, and I was blown away by Paso Robles. I worked up on Howell Mountain, I worked in Sonoma. I don't know, there's something about Paso. The soil is incredible. There's so much variety, there's so many hills. You can really grow anything in Paso Robles, as long as it's in the right spot. I don't know, it's just a really interesting place to be.
And so, the chemistry behind that is when the soil has these calcareous rocks like we have in Paso Robles, that's the limestone type rocks. There's a very high pH in the soil. What that does is it restricts growth of the berries. It creates smaller clusters, thicker skins, more concentration, but also more acidity. So for us with Broadside, you can make these monster wines with good acidity, but you can also make wines with finesse, with great concentration, but the concentration is in the flavors, and there's acidity and there's structure. We don't shy away from tannin and structure. It's something we like with our wines. We don't want there to be too much. We want that to be in balance, but barrels do an amazing job in softening tannin. So,
along with the calcareous rocks, there's also the high clay soils that retain the moisture and have that slightly kind of positive charge to them that kind of plays around with the roots.
Question about from Pull That Cork. This is Nancy. Which is drought notwithstanding, is dry farming possible or even desirable in Paso? Is the variety or the age of the vine playing a role?
So Pull That Cork asked about dry farming, if that's sustainable or possible. And I'll give you my thoughts, and then Steffi's really the farmer. But I think it's something to strive for, and land management, being a steward of the land is very, very important, and it's something we think about every day. I mean, our property's on a well. We have a small vineyard at our house. We water as little as possible. If we water too much, we can't take showers. So, it's really important to us that we think about this. But at the same time, a little bit of water is necessary when you're not getting rain. So, fortunately, the vineyards we have amazing natural water sources, and they are farmed sustainably, and that's but we certainly can use some rain. I mean, we've gotten some the last few weeks, and I don't know if you want to add to the
I think
water.
dry farming is definitely possible in parts of Paso Robles. I don't think everywhere can dry farm. I think the water crisis in Paso Robles has kind of brought all the farmers together, whether you farm carrots, peppers, wine grapes, whatever it is, and everybody has to kind of band together, and we know it's a problem. With all the heavy synthetic fertilizers, we have a lot of areas that have some higher nitrates in the water, some water quality issues, and I think depending where you are in Paso Robles, everybody might answer that question a little differently. I know I farm some grapes on the west side of Paso Robles, which is really high clay, and we have dry farmed since 2007, most of the entire vineyard. To get grapes going, you definitely need to give them at least 4 gallons a week to really get them strong. But grapevines are pretty resilient and trainable, and as you cut back on the water, they can eventually, the roots will go straight down instead of outward to find those water sources. But I do hope it rains this year.
Just to comment that everybody thinks you're doing a great job on this brand live, so just letting you know.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go on to the Merlot here. So Merlot is such a kind of derided. I mean, it amazes me still that like this movie Sideways had so much crazy impact on Merlot. And what's interesting is when we take our Merlot out, we make very small quantities of it because the market doesn't really exist. But everyone's like, oh my God, I love Merlot. I love this Merlot, and it's just maybe consumers aren't quite there yet, but we do pretty well selling it. I think the comments we get from people is, wow, that's a really serious glass of Merlot, and it's really good, and it makes me remember why I used to like Merlot so much, and that makes us really happy because Merlot is a wonderful grape. And it makes wines that are very pleasing. They can be serious. I think this is a more serious version of Merlot, but it has a beautiful palate. It's definitely a great variety that's rounder on the palate. It has maybe easier to deal with flavors, but it's not what the perception is after the movie Sideways, that it's just some wimpy, nothing grape variety. So. Hopefully there are some positive thoughts on the Merlot here. But it always surprises us, kind of the reaction when we're out selling it. And we've never had a problem selling it, just that, there's such a discussion about Merlot, when's it going to come back, and it's interesting. But
So the Merlot, the grapes come from the Margarita Vineyard, which is probably arguably one of the most coldest vineyards in the Paso Robles AVA. If you've ever driven down Highway 101 and you go through Paso Robles and you hit a couple other little tiny cow towns, and as you go over the grade, Margarita Vineyard is just kind of off on the left-hand side, a couple miles back. So we watched it this summer quite a bit on fire in Santa Margarita, which is kind of scary to have the fires go on there.
so yeah, this vineyard is, people talk about Paso Robles, east side, west side, what side are you on? I was printing labels one time and this guy said, well, I've never heard of you. You must be on the east side, the west side being the more exciting place. And I said, it's actually the Upper East Side where we are. So this is I like to think of this as, the east side and the west side of Paso Robles is really, a lot of it's a freeway. So this vineyard is closer to the ocean than a lot of the really sexy properties on the west side. It's cooler than nearly every vineyard in Paso, and it also has, it's an old fossilized seabed, which we'll talk more about with the Cabernet. But it actually is a spectacular place to grow Merlot. I've worked with Merlot from this vineyard since 2006, both with Jornada and then 2008 with Broadside, and Cabernet has a tough time ripening on the Margarita vineyard. It does, and that's why we like it so much. It hangs for a long time. Merlot ripens about a month earlier than Cabernet, and it does really well there. Great acid, great fruit, intensity. So it's.
We're getting comments of dusty cocoa, sandalwood,
Yeah.
Kirsch.
I definitely pick up the sandalwood, and I'm getting kind of an earthy component, almost a mushroom sort of thing, and then some cherries on the finish. But not that chocolate-covered cherries, more of a, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think hopefully, I mean, for us, we're gonna keep fighting the fight with Merlot. It's a wine we like to drink, and as long as a few of you out there will keep buying it, we should be in good shape. But yeah, we in New York, sales have really picked up, and that's a really good sign for us. And we're going to keep rolling with it. We've had some press for this wine. And,
Yeah, this was one of the San Francisco top 100 wines.
yeah,
Last year?
last like a year and a half ago.
According to whom?
Jon
Jon
Bonné.
Bonné.
Okay. Jenna at This Is My Happiness wants to know about visiting the winery tasting room. If you could elaborate
Sure.
on Tin City, please.
So the question was coming to visit us
Oh yeah.
if we have a facility or can meet with you. And we do have a tasting room in Paso Robles. We're in a little industrial area called Tin City. You can look us up on our website, give us a call, and if we know you're coming, we'll be sure to be there. We're typically by appointment only, so just appreciate a heads up, but we would love to meet you, introduce you to the wines personally, and love to hear your thoughts.
My vine spot, Dazelle from Virginia asked about that says that you deliver on quality and value, but aside from new oak, how do you keep pricing down and deliver good quality?
So my vine spot asked about delivering on value and quality and how we do that aside from new oak. So, I think I think the way we deliver on quality. I mean, I guess I've never really understood wine pricing too well. I kind of look at, okay, here's what we pay for the grapes. Here's what everything costs. It seems like we can make a little bit of money here, so here's where we can sell the wines. I mean, I think wine pricing. My goal is never to make a bunch of allocated wines. We do a couple little things like that are very expensive, but to make wines that people can enjoy on a regular basis. So, the grapes we purchase are not overly expensive, and we use neutral barrels. We've bought barrels from friends and other winemakers who work for big wineries, and we don't pay a lot for them, and we get the best used barrels we can get. One time a sommelier told us that our wines were too oaky, and I think we had 2% oak in that wine, new oak in that wine. But maybe we had some good used oak that we paid. I used to trade champagne to a winemaker who loved champagne for barrels. Probably wouldn't want that out there. But I don't think it's that hard. I mean, I think it's more the mentality of what you're trying to achieve. I mean, there's something exciting maybe about producing wines that sell for a lot of money, but to me, there's also something really exciting about producing wines that people can drink on a regular basis. That my friends growing up with can afford to pop a cork and drink it, and not say, oh, my friend makes wine, but I can't afford to buy it. So that's really all there is to it. I mean,
Well, and another thing too, I mean, if you look at any of these bottles, it has one label wrapped around the whole thing. So instead of paying for a front label and a back label, we're paying for one label. So you can really bring your costs down by half right there just for your labeling.
yeah, there's a lot of little tricks we do. We just switched to capsule that is sorry, is that sexy? So we did a capsule that uses a mix of aluminum and plastic, and it's much more environmentally friendly, but it's also
Much more cost effective.
it's a quarter the cost of traditional tin. So there's a lot of ways to save money, and then we aren't in this to get rich. We're in this to make great wine. So we've just put everything into the wine. We don't pay consultants. We don't pay. I mean, we've always just done the work ourselves. And Stephy goes out in the vineyards, and I do the winemaking. And when you have a lot of layers of people you have to pay, the wines I'm sure get more expensive. But it seems to work for us the way we have it. So let's see. So yeah, I think the Merlot. I mean, I think it's good. I mean, we made around 1,000 cases of this. It's pretty small production. If there's not anything else, we should go to the Margarita.
How about any food pairings, since we did it with the Chardonnay on the other two wines? You should talk about your wood burning oven.
Yeah, so we're really into food. So question was asked about food pairing. I mean, I think with this, we have enough acidity that you could almost do pasta. We have a wood burning oven. We cook a lot of vegetables. Actually, I think we use a lot of times we use meat as seasonings. Like we'll do. We'll cook Brussels sprouts with some guanciale or something like that. You could always go classic with roasted meats, beef, with any of these wines. But I think they're versatile enough, and there's enough acidity that they'll actually work with a variety of food. So let's go to. You still see us? That turned off.
Okay. Hang on.
As long as
Alice, do you want to check?
Yeah.
Careful.
If everyone can still see us out there. So let's go on to the.
Sometimes the bandwidth kicks out and gets back on.
Let's go on to the Margarita Cab. So this is also 2013. So this one this is the first wine we ever made. So this vineyard, like I said, it's an amazing property. So one of my friends, really good friend of mine, Mike Seiner, took over management of this property just before that and had all these grapes available and kind of came to me and said, I have this vineyard. And I said, I've kind of thought about making, some value priced wines. There was a lot of fruit available. So 2006, we started with this one wine from Cabernet from Margarita, and it really is our attempt to do a very serious level Cabernet, but at a great price. It's all aged in neutral with maybe 1-2% new wood. Really the key is we've worked with the same blocks since the beginning, and Stephy's watching the grapes and sampling and determining when to pick. We're going to talk about Margarita.
So yeah, Margarita Vineyard was planted originally by the Mondavi winery in
It was the late 90s.
Late 90s. Big planting boom going on in Paso at that time. And then as my doggy sold off to Constellation, this vineyard came up for sale, and 3 local guys bought it. So it's been really fun to kind of get in there and kind of nestle into our spot. There's these really cool fossilized oyster shells as you walk through the vineyard. You'll kind of see them sticking out of the soil. And if you kick them really hard, it's kind of like when LeBron James puts the chalk on his hands and he claps at the beginning of the game. It goes. So it's kind of a fun vineyard to walk through and kick things.
Oh, I have the oyster shell. Hold on.
Oh, and I think we have an oyster shell here that you could get a close-up view of.
So yeah, so all those things, the soil, the oyster shells, really they contribute to the fruit. So the yields are lower. The skins are thicker. You see the oyster shell? But it's these things, you just walk around the vineyard and
they're closer to you.
they're all over.
It's just because this is delayed.
They're all over the place, and that this is all contributes to high pH in the soil, the calcareous nature, and what it really boils down to is the fruit quality. The yields are smaller, the fruit quality is better. There's great acidity, and since we've produced this wine, we've had a lot of notoriety for it. I think in a very positive way, that it really does taste like very serious Cabernet. In terms of aromatics, balance, structure, finish, and that's really what we're trying to do here. So very little new oak, really good neutral oak, native fermentation. It's actually really hopefully stripped down, very simplistic winemaking that showcases what we think's a great vineyard source, and that's really our approach with all of the wines. So hopefully,
We should talk about the zip lining on the property.
well, they have a zip line on the property. We
Come down and zip with us.
so you can
Yes. Margarita Adventures, you can go zip lining over the vineyards.
yeah. So good birthday treat for our kids.
Yeah, we took our kids when they turned 8 and their families zip lining. When we got there, I looked at the first one, I'm like, everyone is going to chicken out. There's no way that these 8-year-old kids are going to do it. And my daughter walked right up to the front. She said, "It's my birthday and I'm going first." And she's just dangling there from this little line. And I said, "Well, guess we're going." She kind of set the bar for everyone.
Question from My Vine Spot. Since you use almost all neutral oak, what would you say neutral barrels impart to your wines? Aroma, flavor, texturally.
So my vine spot asked about neutral barrels and what they impart to our wine. Barrels are kind of amazing because so this wine in some vintages when we pick it, it can be a little on the green side, even on the bell pepper side. We've even released 1 or 2 that have a hint of bell pepper. I don't think this does at all, but time in barrel, creates this oxygenation, this micro oxygenation natural process that's really amazing. And you can simulate it in tanks with a machine, but it's hard to duplicate it in barrel. There's also there's something about barrels. Every vessel, I think of wine as kind of a living thing, and when you break it down and put it into a barrel, each barrel is kind of its own little universe, and each one is a little bit different. And what we do, and it's as we've grown, it's harder and harder, but we go through and we taste every barrel, and we kick out some barrels that we don't like and find another home for them. But these barrels add a lot of complexity. In even neutral barrels, to me, too many new barrels, it's almost like a flaw in the wine. You taste the barrel. We want to taste Cabernet. We want to taste the vineyard. We want to taste Paso Robles. We want to taste the vintage. A little bit of oak can add complexity to that, but I think neutral, without it. And neutral oak, these neutral barrels add a lot of complexity to our wine. So that's and then texturally, you definitely get softness. That oxygen gives you softness, and so it's pretty helpful. If we get a few, newer ones, that's fine too.
Wine and good food. Wanted to ask what you thought about the ageability of the Margarita Vineyard Cab.
So Wine and Good Food asked about the ageability of Margarita Cab. Oh, so I think this wine is super ageable.
I don't know how that's possible.
I'm not a big fan of telling people to age their wines, but I'm maybe more of a fan of it when the wine, a lot of people age expensive wines that are, some of these high scoring wines can be very ripe, on edge, and that's a real risky proposition as far as I'm concerned to try to age a wine like that. When a wine has acidity, that's actually a really good determinant of ageability. And with the structure, I don't think there's much risk in aging a wine like this. The price isn't bad. Like I said earlier, I opened a 2008 week or so ago with a retailer, and he was really impressed. So I think with the structure, with the acidity, it's a very good candidate for aging. Whether or not people will do it with a $20-some bottle of wine, it's tough to say.
It was kind of funny as we were tasting with that retailer. He asked the same question, and we had this 2008 open ready to drink there. And the guy that was with him said, I'm that guy that when I find a wine I really like, I buy a case of it. And in the first year I drink 6 bottles of it, and then in the next year I'll drink 3 bottles of it. And then maybe I'll have another one 5 years later, and there are 2 that are just get lost somewhere in the cellar. He said this is that perfect wine because it tastes great today, but it'll be good when I lose it in my cellar. I said, great, how many cases would you like?
Pull that cork. Peter, that's Nancy and Peter together, wants to know generally your average bricks. Maybe you should make it more specific. But
Average what?
Bricks.
Oh.
So Pull the Cork was wondering what our average bricks was at harvest, and we typically would love to pick a 23.8.
Yeah, 23, 24. We've picked stuff as low as 21, 22. We've picked as high as 25. I think the more, again, if you pick some early stuff, you can get complexity from that. You pick the later stuff, you have some riper stuff. So we'll pick different blocks at different times. And Stephy a lot of times picks together with me or samples.
It seems to be really specific to vintage also, and beyond even the bricks. Last year, 2014, was a strange year. The conversion rates were so much lower than they typically were any other year that we've made wine. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
So there's a ratio. There's different sugars that are in the grape, and so depending on the ratio of sucrose to fructose, say that fast 10 times. You get these different conversion rates. So we try to make wines that are under 14% alcohol. Some years it doesn't happen, but typically we try to pick right around 23.5 to 23.8 bricks would be perfect. But it depends on the vintage also. If we get a lot of 105-degree days, there will be raisins out there, and
yeah, you just have to deal with it.
Just have to accept them.
So it's interesting with these, this trend toward lower alcohol. We'd love to always be below 14 because we pay less in taxes. That's really the truth about it. Sometimes it doesn't happen. but we're really picking based on what the vintage gives us, what the varietal gives us. You know, like Steffi
And all
said,
brightness.
you know, the conversion is pretty strange. You can pick at 24 one year and end up at 14% alcohol. The next year you could be at 14.5. The next year you could be at 13.5. So I wasn't the top student at Fresno State, so I don't completely understand how that happens, but it's been explained to me a few times, but it's a pretty interesting process.
Okay, some other questions. Let's see, from my vine spot once again. Talk about
So we
the
have another
local,
question from my vine spot.
talk about the local food and wine scene in Paso for those who are thinking of visiting. Obviously, we can talk about the explosion of wine bars and restaurants there, but how's your distribution for Broadside Wines locally?
So the question was about the local food and wine scene and about our distribution locally. So I mean, there's, you know, obviously like everywhere, it's crazy when we travel. The food and wine scene across America is exploding, in my opinion, and it is in Paso as well. Great new restaurants, people focused on, you know, local ingredients more and more, and then our distribution locally, we're in really great places and feel lucky to be so. We don't really push hard to be in every place locally. It's such a competitive market with several hundred wineries. You know, if people want our wine, I feel they'll purchase it. But we're happy to be where we are, and you can find our wine in the region, you know, in many of the great places. And but you know, I think that works for us.
And Paso's kind of booming right now. I mean, it's hard to find hotel rooms, especially on weekends. There always seems to be a festival going on for something. And the food is great. It's kind of anything you would want to eat except dim sum. If anybody would want to come to Paso Robles and bring a dim sum restaurant, you have two customers right here.
Soup dumplings. There's no soup dumplings in Paso Robles. So.
Gonzo Gastronomy would love to know if you're planning on any other wild ferments. And we've got
Okay, Gonzo Gastronomy asked about other wild ferments. Well, I think maybe that's referring to this wine here. You know, we do use native fermentation on many, if not all, of what we do. We're kind of looking for a name for our Chardonnay, and since this was always native, it's kind of what Aussies use. They go, it's a wild ferment, you know. But native fermentation is something we like. You know, it's another element to help give us complexity, and we just, you know, we'll just use the name on the Chardonnay, but it's still a method of fermentation that we like. So.
So kind of maybe final thoughts, invite people to visit, wrap up.
So you know, hopefully this has been a great look at what we're doing with Broadside. You know, if you're ever in Paso, we're available. You know, right now, if you reach out, it's going to be either myself, Steffi, or our assistant winemaker David, who's been with us for 5 years. That's pretty much the team, and you know, we can, if you want to go look at vineyards or check out what we do in the cellar, or just, you know, grab some food. That's kind of what we're all about. We're a small team. We keep it very under control, and you know, just try to make, you know, the most balanced, value-driven, food-friendly wines we can. So that's really what we're all about.
Yeah, we really appreciate, you know, everyone asking questions and being interested in what we're doing, and maybe there's more questions.
Yeah. Have you had any happy accidents where something turned out great after it was a mistake? That's from Wine Wonket.
Wine Wonket asked if there was ever any disasters that turned out to be awesome. And there's nothing worse. There was one year where we had some fruit where the trucking got messed up and the fruit sat there in the sun for a while. and it was frustrating, and then the fruit finally came to the winery, and then our press broke, and all these things kept happening, and it was really frustrating. And there's nothing worse than when somebody says, wow, this is the best vintage you ever made. You should do that, whatever you did, you should do that again. And you're like, no, it'll take a decade off my life. But I don't think we've had any.
Well, I mean, I think the reality is there's always things unexpected, and this year we had the fires, and that's going to be interesting, and we're exploring what that's going to lead to, and hopefully nothing, but sometimes you change your picking behavior, or a lot of times we have stuff that in the cellar doesn't taste perfect, but you kind of taste it with this and blend and figure out how to put things together. We also make a red blend called Printer's Alley, so we're able to blend in that.
Some oddball
And
barrels.
And a lot of times we don't know how things are going to taste, or our accidents, how they'll be resolved until the wines are out in the world. And then, people like yourself say, oh my God, I just had this broadside, and, it's a thrill to see people excited about stuff. You're never sure as a winemaker. Every time I release a new wine, I'm like, oh my God, is this going to be the one that nobody likes, And then, it starts selling, and you get some positive feedback, and you start to feel better. And you're never really comfortable until it's all gone, and then you're like, whew, people must have liked it.
2 more questions. Are you looking to expand into Rhone varieties in the future? And secondly, explain bio-organic. And then we really have to wrap.
Okay, so the first question was about Rhone varieties, and then I'll let Stephy answer the second one. But we're really, Broadside is really not looking to move into Rhone varieties. We really want to focus on Chardonnay and Cabernet for now. There's so many producers in Paso working with Rhone varieties that I think that's very well covered. And for us, Broadside is really kind of about bringing value to the masses, and the masses right now are focused on Cabernet and Chardonnay, and that's our focus. So we're and then the second question.
The second question was about
Bio-organic.
bio-organic.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure what I know, but did it mean maybe biodynamic?
I'm just trying to see where it came up. It says you can explain bio-organic in your description, biodynamic and organic. That was under Stephy's bio. I don't know what that.
Oh, that's on your website.
Well, I think that's
It's on your website.
our assistant winemaker, use that term to kind of
Combine the two
ideas
together.
Yeah, so Steffi works on vineyard projects that share elements from biodynamics, like
Well, a lot of
Winnemata.
time with biodynamics, there's a certification you go through, and I've never gone through the biodynamic certification except once in Napa. But so it's taking kind of some ideas from the biodynamics and some from the bioorganic, or from just the certified organic process. There was a couple times where we had some high copper levels, so we pruned on a full moon, and idea being that the metals would rise to the top. Did it work? The next year we didn't have those copper levels. Could be coincidence, I don't know, but I think that's kind of what he was meaning by that, kind of combining some organic ideas and some biodynamic ideas together, growing. I hope that answers your question.
Just sign off and say thank you.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up. We really appreciate you tasting these wines with us, and hope to hear from you with any other questions. You can email or send it through Twitter, and we'll figure out how to respond.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you spending time with us. Bye.